I am from the Produce Garden, which is a business I started about 8 years ago. I actually have a small holding in central Victoria, which is organically run. It's only about 3 to 4 acres. Really tried to instigate a lot of organic growing there over the last 8 years. And I'm also, I don't know if anyone here's seen me on YouTube before, probably not. I've got about 310 videos on YouTube if you want to have a squeeze at that too. If you go onto YouTube and just type in the Produce Garden, you'll find me on there as well. So I'm here today talking about modern day organics. Organic growing, like we're all aware of organics and what have you. Many people here buy specifically organic food or not at all. Or, I guess one of the things with organic food too nowadays is remember years ago when it was a real like cliche, clicky kind of thing, and you had to go to specifically organic markets and buy food and what have you, and it was really expensive and it had that kind of elitist almost cliche about it, which made it very difficult, especially for people with families and what have you. But over the last few years, we've really seen a big change where it's becoming the norm, and that's basically a lot of the work that I do as well. Trying to instigate or change agriculture, modern day agriculture, to instigating more organic forums into their farms. So the way that we used to, or still do, in about 80% of our food production nowadays, being that petrochemical agriculture, just trying to change that as well and trying to integrate more organic and permaculture theories into growing, in modern day growing. But it's quite difficult, like obviously agriculture is such a massive thing now that we've got so many billions of people to feed, it is quite hard. But I wanted to talk just quickly about organic. A lot of people aren't even aware really of the process of organic food, how it starts, what the certification is. So if you want to grow, let's say you've got a small farm and you want to grow organic food, everything has to be organic there. Like say with my place, you have to have like 5 years background of what you've actually done on the farm itself. So talking about what you've had there, if anything's been sprayed, if there's been livestock on there, if there's been crops, obviously we're all aware of genetic modification in crops nowadays. So you're not allowed to have any GMOs or be surrounded by any because of cross contamination or what have you. So it is a fairly involved process. If you've ever gone through the organic certification process, it's literally like local yellow pages. It takes ages to get through it all. So it's really, if you're buying organic, then you know that it really is certified organic. It's a long process to actually go through it. And I guess one of the things too, that even though I am an organic activist as such, or people label me as an activist with organic food and organic growing, there's a lot of people in the organic industry that probably don't particularly like what I'm doing because of the fact that I like to project the truth with organic food. Now, a lot of the reasons why people don't eat organically is because of the cost. So it is expensive to buy. Like if you go to the supermarket and if you've got a family and you've got, say you're buying garlic as an example, and you've got garlic here that's certified organic, it's $50 a kilo, or if you've got garlic here that's from China or wherever, it's $8 a kilo. And most people are going to buy the $8 a kilo one because people can't afford to spend $50 for a kilo of organic garlic. So that's one of the things I want to try and start too with the industry, is just to get the prices lower of things as well, so more widespread. So a lot of people are in organic growing because they want organic food to become part of the norm. A lot of people, realistically, are in it because they want to make money out of it, because organic's got that stature about it. And that's what I want to change too, and that's what I'm doing for a lot of things as well. So I write a lot, have a lot of articles published here and overseas, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to push through, because really I guess last century, especially around the 50s and 60s, after everything happened after World War II and all that, and industry took off, petrochemical agriculture really took off as well. We had a massive influx of supplies, and we had fuel, and people were breeding, and all this industry going on. So that agriculture industry really took off. But it took off in the sense of it wasn't really, pardon me, wasn't really looking after itself in a self-sustainable way, in the sense of looking after the land and the techniques. Now those techniques worked in the 50s when, say, Australia had 14 million people or what have you, all of it. But the problem is that even though nowadays, like 60 years later, we're still using the same techniques and they're outdated and they're not working. And that's why we're seeing problems like soil erosion, high prices, and we get things like, we've just come out of a 10-year drought. So we're really trying to climb uphill with it. But that's another thing that I'm trying to get people changing too. Like, does anyone here ever read or know anything about permaculture or things like that? No? There's a lot of different ideas. I could talk about that for hours. But there's a lot of things that could be used from that method of thinking of agriculture and permaculture that we could use in agriculture today, but it really is an uphill battle. It's really quite hard. So I guess after all that, we had that whole, agricultural change in the 50s, 60s, 70s, last century. And now, probably, I guess everything kind of changed about the 80s, early 90s, where organic food, kind of became cool. You had to go to specific places to buy it. It's really expensive, and it was this clicky kind of thing. And I guess it kind of shot itself in the foot to a degree with organic food because it was so expensive and such a cliche kind of market. Like you had to go to a certain organic place to buy it. That it made itself, that created an aura about itself where it was, organic, whatever. But people started buying more of it, so it started becoming more popular. And thankfully today you can go to places like Coles or Woolworths or what have you, and you can buy organic there, which is great. Even though still nowadays you might have row after row of non-organic food and then just have a little tiny organic section there. So it's still a bit of an uphill battle. But the price is probably the worst thing of all, which I've copped a bit of flack for in the past too, because I can't see the point in charging $50 for a kilo of garlic, like I was saying earlier, when really, if you could, it's not costing you that much to put it out there for $50 a kilo, but if you can put it out there for say 30, then you're going to get more people buying it, and then hopefully the market will expand, and then we can get change happening within the agricultural industry itself. But it's another thing, like, trying to get that change happening when it's so ingrained, like farmers, like my grandfather was a farmer, a potato farmer, and people like that, they've been doing it, and their parents and their grandparents have been doing it for centuries, so it's really hard to kind of change that way of thinking with things. So it's a bit of an uphill battle with it. But there are a lot of things that people are trying to change and are changing with things like crop rotation, seed saving and stuff like that. And then that's another thing, like people here are aware of GMO, genetically modified foods, and companies like Monsanto and Bayer and stuff like that. That's another lecture I could go on about. But that's another thing that's making it difficult too, is these genetically modified crops are coming in to our food system, and again, it's not so much the food that's being changed, but it's the politics behind that agriculture that's being changed. So that's making it really quite difficult. But again, I think actually there's Francis Murrell from Madge who's going to be talking, and they're great. So if you get a chance, see them, because see her talk, because she knows a lot more about it than I do. The thing is with organic foods too, it's not so much hard to buy it nowadays, it's just the cost of things, like I was saying. But the other thing too is nowadays you don't have to go out into the country to buy food, or if you want to buy organic you don't have to go out into the country, even in cityscapes like Melbourne obviously, but like here there's farmers markets, food co-ops, things like that. Does anyone here ever go to farmers markets or okay? So yourself, most of the time you can go there and you can talk to the person, and the person's actually probably the one who's grown it or directly got it from someone else. So it's good to have that. We're kind of getting a bit more connected to our food, because for me anyway, I think we're buying tomatoes that are green from some other country and they're being shipped to Australia and then they're using ethylene gas to ripen them. So, you know, we all know that tomatoes grow during, say, predominantly spring and summer, and yet we can go to Woolworths or Coles and buy tomatoes any time of year, or watermelon, you know, things like that. So I think more so with the farmers markets, you're dealing with the person who's actually growing the food, so they're not going to, you know, they're not getting it from overseas and having all these massive greenhouses and polytunnels. So what you're buying is seasonal too, which is another thing, seasonality when it comes down to that kind of stuff too. The other thing, sorry, I was just ahead of myself about it, thinking. The other thing too with organic food is a lot of it is overpriced. They kind of try and justify it by loss. So like we're not using pesticides or herbicides or what have you. So they have to bargain for like losing 10%, which is why they make it so more expensive than anything else. But that's another thing I've copped a bit of flack for too in the past, especially with articles I've written, where I think that organic growers, rather than put up the prices for certain things, should take a loss to a degree as far as what they produce and lower some of the prices so they're out there to compete with the other people, like the big mainstream agriculture. So in the end, it is actually beneficial to them. So by putting it out there and making it cheaper, more people will buy it, it'll become the norm, and then we'll go from there. Like, I think, remember, like, it's not that long ago that we actually didn't even have recycle bins or anything like that. So everyone was like, oh, remember we used to get those little buckets, those little plastic black bins, and that's all you got, whereas now we've got these massive things. So it's just a matter of changing people's awareness of things, and once it starts to become part of the norm, people just accept it and it's fine from there. Sorry, I want to talk just quickly about, does anyone here grow any of their own food or things like that? Have their own veg garden or even herbs and things like that? Most of the videos I do on YouTube are pretty much, well, they're focused around my small holding, but a lot of it is around growing your own produce and your own food. It's easy for me to say that in one sense because I've got acres around me, so I can literally, go out, plough fields and grow what have you. But a lot of stuff, and a couple of talks I've done in the past too have been about urban sustainability as well. So even if you've got a flat, you can like have a pot and grow some herbs, or you can dig up a little bit in the backyard and start a small vegetable garden. There's lots of things we can do to become more aware actually where our food comes from, and maybe just gain a little bit more self-sustainability as well. So we know what we're eating rather than just blindly going to Coles or Woolworths or what have you and just going from there and just buying it and eating. We don't really know what's in it. Plus, there's also the fact of the pesticides and the herbicides that go into it as well, because especially now there's no legislation really in Australia for genetically modified crops as yet. So we can be eating that kind of stuff, and you can spray that stuff with pesticides and herbicides till the cows at home. It won't hurt, but it's absorbed by the plant, and then we're eating it. So, and then all of those chemicals are linked to other problems and human diseases as well. So it does make it, just being aware. A lot of people aren't even aware of what's actually going on with what they're eating. They're eating it every day. They're not even really aware of what's going on.